Students will be back in school today in New York City, the nation's largest school district, as they join millions of other kids returning to the classroom nationwide. It follows a new report out last week that shows the extent of the last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic on school children, essentially erasing 2 decades of progress in math and reading. The National Assessment for Educational Progress, often called the nation's report card, found that math scores dropped 7 points, marking a first-ever decline. And reading scores slipped 5 points, producing the largest dip in 30 years. Joining us now, national reporter for Chalkbeat, Patrick Wall. Patrick, good morning. Thanks for being here. These are just devastating and depressing numbers here. What is, as educators, we're back to the classrooms now across the country, what is the plan for these schools and teachers to try to reverse that massive decline for our children?
Yeah, I think a lot of educators were alarmed by what they saw, but not surprised, knowing the massive disruptions that students face since the beginning of the pandemic. So schools are really racing to help catch them up. And one of the findings from the test is that it was the lowest performing students who fell the furthest behind. And so that is really going to be the focus of their efforts. One of the biggest things they're trying to do is just get students more learning time. So that's tutoring, after school programs. Most districts did summer school programs. They just want to have more time with students to help them master some of the material that they just didn't get when they were remote learning, in quarantines, all the different disruptions they've been going through.
Yes, certainly still some COVID outbreaks in schools across the country, but districts nationwide are back for in-person learning with very few exceptions. What are some early strategies that seem like they may have some chance of success?
I think, it's basic. I think it's kind of common sense, but tutoring is one of the most kind of highly effective evidence-backed strategies. There's a catch, though. It's usually called high dosage tutoring. That just means that it's frequent. It's very small groups of students with the teacher. And usually it's best when it happens during the school day. And so that's when it's most effective. The challenge is going to be making sure that the students who need it most are actually getting it, so that they're showing up for tutoring, they're getting the support they need. And then, of course, as I'm sure your viewers have heard, there have been a lot of staffing and hiring challenges. And so schools are trying to get enough teachers and tutors to make sure that students can get that extra help.
And then, Patrick, briefly, this, of course, students also returning to school here in the wake of this terrible rash of school shootings, in particular in Uvalde, Texas. Parents that you've been talking to, just how concerned are they about their students' safety as a new academic year begins?
I think just the reality we live in is that parents, students themselves, teachers are always going to have violence and gun violence in particular in the back of their minds. I think there is a lot of the focus on kind of what's ahead. And again, I think the academic challenges ahead are really huge. The mental health crisis among students, I think, is also top of mind for most schools. And so certainly I know that safety is going to be a big issue, and surveys show that it's one of the top concerns for parents, but I also think that schools have a lot of other things on their agenda that they just have to take care of this school year.
National reporter for Chalkbeat, Patrick Wall, thank you so much for joining us. And on a personal note, as the first school begins again, my oldest heading in middle school today. Beckett, we love you and we're proud of you. Up next here on Way Too Early, how a slip-up from a social media giant might help Democrats in November. And coming up on Morning Joe, the latest in the federal investigation of former President Trump and the impending response from the DOJ on the special master ruling. Plus, a pair of former Pentagon leaders warning of a dangerous era for the U.S. military. Former Defense Secretaries Leon Panetta and Chuck Hagel. They'll both be joining the conversation. Also ahead, Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall. He'll be a guest as well. Morning Joe, just a few moments away.